Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us again, whether that be Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, California, Idaho, wherever it is, we are so thankful that you're here. And again, here being this safe space where we push ourselves, we pick up the Bible, this ancient book, and we say, what does the context actually tell us about what this piece means? Who was the original audience? Who was the writer of the piece, right? What was the intention? All of those questions is what we delve into every time we pick up this ancient piece because we believe that's the responsible way of viewing the book, the compilation of pieces we call the Bible. And so, if you're joining us today, you know that we just finished a short series there in December, and we looked at the birth story, the birth narrative, and I think it was a lot of fun. And we just finished with last week, we were talking about kind of like this concept of new beginnings. We're stepping into the new year. And so today we go back to our Genesis study, and I've got a good one for you. But before we move into it, let me remind you again, Genesis is not a history book, right? It was not written in order to give us perfect dates, these stories that are intended to be taken very literally about specific people who live specific ages. That was never the intent. The whole idea about compiling all of these stories, all of these letters, all of these wisdom pieces was because Israel, at this point in time, they're in Babylonian captivity. 587 BC, they lose everything, right? Babylon, this large empire, comes in and they take control, right? They take them hostage, they take them captive, and them, just like all the other small tribal people, they go into the city of Babylon, and they're going to assimilate. Right? They're going to take on Babylonian gods. They're going to take on Babylonian rituals, their Babylonian stories. They trade theirs for this stronger, more powerful empire. But Israel is one of the very few that says, no, no, no. We're going to keep Judaism kosher, right? We're going to hold on to our tribe's rituals, our tribe's values. We're not going to lose Passover, right? We are going to keep our traditions. We're going to stay Jewish. And so they, in response to their fears of assimilation, they compile all of the stories, all the rituals, everything together in order that they could essentially keep their traditions pure, right? In their mind, pure, holy, not Babylon, right? That's the idea here. And so when they brought out the scrolls, when they brought out Torah, there was a celebration, right? I know many listeners, you will go to church weekly. And when the pastors will bring out this book, this compilation we call the Bible, you don't hear a celebration. You don't see people in awe. But for Jewish people, there's a deep reverence, a deep anticipation. Whenever the rabbi will sit on the stool, that's usually what they'll do. They'll sit on a stool or in an elevated place. They'll sit and they will share concepts from Torah, their history, their traditions, their values. The rabbi will share that again to them, and there's an anticipation there that life is about to unfold, right? Something really deep is about to be shared. And so that's what would happen again with Torah. And so when Israelites, when Jewish people, when they hear any concept from the rabbi about Torah, they see themselves in the story. So when they hear about Abraham, they're not thinking Abraham, literal Abraham. They're thinking deeper. They're seeing themselves as the Israelite nation in the person of Abraham, Adam, Moses. The list goes on, right? King David. They see themselves in the story. And so this is the deeper idea that we're going to move through today. So Genesis, we're going to delve into Genesis again, but let me remind you, we talked about Jacob and Esau, right? And we're not going to move through too much with Esau, but today, but we're going to remind you, we've talked about this in the past. We've had a couple of weeks off, right, from Genesis. So the two brothers, we have to understand these really are something bigger for Israelites. When they think of Jacob, again, Jacob is the one that is like the scholar, right? He's the one that stands in the tent. He takes quiet, thoughtful, settled time, right? The idea here is he strove to protect the future of Judaism and Jewish life. This is how they saw Jacob, right? Many of us in Christian churches, we grew up with this idea Jacob was bad, he was deceitful. No. not according to the people who wrote it. Um, Jacob, Jacob was the one who understood the beauty of the birthright. That's who Jacob was. So in an encounter there, we have Esau, who does not understand the birthright. He doesn't understand the blessing. He does not understand the beauty of Judaism. He does not understand that Judaism is supposed to be a gift to the world, right? And so he gives away the blessing. He thinks of his belly over the beautiful blessing that is the birthright to be Jewish, right? That's the deeper picture here. And so these two, they're going to kind of demonstrate the ideas of like the light and the dark side of Judaism, right? The higher self and the lower self, right? So that's kind of where we see this. And so a reminder again, the twins are really the beautiful light and darkness that we as Jews embody from day to day. This is one of my favorite commentators. Whichever side we feed is the side that will either waste the blessing of life or multiply it. Right? So good. And so again, today we're going to focus mainly on Jacob because we're going to finish off the story. We're going to talk about the ladder and why sit on a rock, all these concepts. So let's delve in right now into this section that we're going to read, finish off chapter 28. So here we go. Verse 11. I'll read it to you today. He arrived at the place, let me start at the beginning. And Jacob left Beersheba and he went to Haran. He arrived at the place and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them, it says, at or around his head, and he laid them down in that place. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the ground, and in its top reached the heavens. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. And behold, the Lord was standing over him, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, the God of Isaac. The land on which upon you are lying, I will give you into your seed. Verse 14, and your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall again strength westward and eastward and northward and southward, and through you shall be blessed all the families of the earth, and through your seed. And behold, I am with you. I'll guard you wherever you go, and I'll restore you to this land. For I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken concerning you. And Jacob awakened from his sleep, and he said, indeed, the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Verse 17 through 19. And he was frightened, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And Jacob arose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had placed on his head, and he set it upon as a monument, and he poured oil on top of it. And he named the place Bethel, but Luz was originally the name of the city. Verse 20 through 22. And Jacob uttered a vow, saying, if God will be with me, and he will guard me on this way, upon which I am going, and he will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear, and if I return in peace to my father's house, and the Lord will be my God, then this stone, which I have placed as a monument, shall be a house of God, and everything that you give me, I will surely tithe to the Lord. Really, really interesting section here. And so let's delve in. But before I even start, let me say this. For a Jewish person, when you are reading this piece, there is a deep connection here. And what Jacob deals with here, there's certain things here that we completely miss when we are thousands of years absent, right? And so I want to share some things, and you're going to be like, where did that come from? Let me remind you again, I always go to original sources. So I want to know what the rabbis thousands and thousands of years ago thought about this piece. I want to know what the rich traditions were back then about how to interpret this piece. And then after I know that, I can begin to parse out how I can apply it to today. But I first go to the people who wrote it first. It only makes sense. So you're going to find some things and you're going to say, whoa, I had no idea. Really interesting. And so let me share with you. So first off, he went to Haran. Haran is a really interesting word here. And the word actually means sanctuary, right? Sanctuary. I think for many of us, we hear this word sanctuary and we think old, rickety old church. It's got the stained glass. It's completely irrelevant, blah, blah, blah. Sanctuary. I hear this word less and less and less in our culture today. But here's the thing: sanctuary was a really powerful word then. Um, if you've experienced trauma, pain, brokenness, we go to the sanctuary, don't we? We go to the places where we are refilled. That's the idea behind the concept of a sanctuary. So I was thinking about this now, and listeners, where would those places for you be? Right? What places would look like a sanctuary for you? Because for me, I thought, ooh, where is my sanctuary daily? I know that I wake up early in the mornings when I'm working at school. I wake up at 5 and then I go to the gym. And the gym has become this like sanctuary place for me. It's quiet. No one else is there. It's at the school. So I have this whole room all to myself. It's become this quiet place where I reconnect. I blow off some steam. I reconnect. I get empowered again. That's a really beautiful place for me. But I also thought about, oh, when I am in the mountains, when I am outside, when I am mountain biking, right? For me, I think about those places and I think that is my sanctuary. Those are the places that I experience the divine most. And so for you, where are the places that you go to where you feel like, oh, I'm rejuvenated? I am filled up again. I am feeling the divine again. It's such a holy moment. Where are those places for you? Because I'll ask you that, and then I want you to consider this. How long has it been since you've been in that sanctuary, right? Because if it's been a very long time, it also means you are probably feeling pretty empty, aren't you? Yeah. Interesting, right? And so we'll continue. Verse 11 continues with this, and this is one I remember hearing when I was a kid, thinking, I don't get this. So I'll read it for you. He arrived at the place and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place, placed them at his head, and lay down in that place. So often, I think we just look over this, don't we? Oh, yeah, he took some stones and he used them as a pillow. What? You would think if you're wanting a pillow, you're going to use anything but a stone, right? Like anything but a rock. If I would not use anything. If a rock was my only option, I'm just going to lay my head on the floor, right? I'm going to lay my head on the ground. A rock, right? A rock. Why would you use a rock as your pillow? Well, answer is twofold. If you are a Jewish person and you hear this story, you have one of two responses because there's always something interesting here historically and even contextually. So this idea of him laying his head on rocks being around his head, there's actually something to it. So let me share with you 2 points here. Number one, if you are an ancient tribal person, the idea that you would have rocks around your head, pretty common. Look at this, what one commentator writes. He says, he arranged them in the form of a drain pipe around his head because he feared the wild beast. This actually comes from Midrash. And then from a historian. Ancient practice was to arrange rocks around one's head as a layer of protection against animals or snakes. Interesting, right? The practice was common among ancient tribal people and who had been understood as such by any reader post-Babylon. So get this. Anyone reading this would have immediately said, oh yeah, well, that's what we do. When we lay down in the middle of the woods or wherever, we put rocks around our head because they felt that would protect them from getting bites. Because you could get bit on the leg or anywhere else, but you get bit on the head, on the neck, this is a little bit more serious, right? And so they would literally do that when they would sleep. Interesting historical little tidbit for you. Now, there's even more. If you delve into Midrash, which is basically like a ton of different Jewish rabbis coming together and quarreling, arguing over who has the right interpretation, there is one interpretation that you see over and over again, and this is like this would have been just post Babylon. These interpretations start. And so this one is a very ancient understanding. It's a very odd one. And so let me share with you this one. This one, when I first read it, I'm scratching my head. I'm thinking, this is weird. Like, this is very, very strange. So here we go. Let me share it with you because where we'll go with it is really powerful. So here it is. They, the stones, started quarreling with one another. One said, "Let the righteous man lay his head on me." And the other one said, "Let him lay his head on me." Immediately, the Holy One, blessed be he, made them into one stone. And that is why it's stated in verse 18, and he took the stone in the singular that he had placed on his head. So the tradition was they understood there were many stones. That would have been the common thing to do. However, because there is a singular at the end, the interpretations say God must have created them into one stone. One stone of, again, it's there to protect, but there's also something deeper going on. So interesting, weird, right? Like, why would the stones quarrel? Are the stones literally quarreling? Is this what happens? Well, here's the deeper issue. Here's the deeper picture here, and I love what this commentator says. And this is a commentator that's around the time of Jesus, actually. The stones arguing was deeply symbolic to the Jew, and of course, this is translated into English for us today. The stones arguing was deeply symbolic to the Jew. We have been quarreling with one another for ages, and yet when we come together, we create a resting place for the world. Like, that's so good. I would from a rock, one putting their head on a rock. I have never did I catch this until this time reading through it again. I thought, whoa, all this time I've read this story. Never would have I seen this. It's so beautiful. Let me read it to you again. The stones arguing was deeply symbolic to the Jew. We have been quarreling with one another for ages. And yet, when we come together, we create a resting palace for the world. This, while it seems to be a stretch at first, it's really interesting. Think about Jacob and Esau. They are quarreling with one another. It's only when they come together as one Jewish community, family, that they can create this resting palace, this resting place, this kingdom come reality. Because this story is really about Israel. Yeah, I know. I was so excited when I first read that. It's beautiful. But let me continue, because it gets even deeper. He dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the ground, and its top reached to heaven. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. So interesting enough to point out, for ancient tribal people, the gods were always up there, right? The demons, the bad things, all of that was down there. And so in the middle is where the battlefield is, right? And so, of course, the gods, right, these ancient tribal people, it was always about them coming down to us. A constant movement of this and this and this. But we rarely could go up, right? And so this constant movement would have been understood. Well, how do the gods get up and down, up and down? Well, why not a ladder? Right? And so is this literal? Well, probably not. It's even a dream, right? And so all of this to say there's something symbolic and interesting going on here. And again, I've heard so many people remove this from the context. It gets a little weird. Some people try to literalize it. It gets a little odd. Here's the thing to remember always. Israel has lost their home. Israel lost their home, and they want to go back, right? They want their land back. Right? They feel as if God has left them, forsaken them, the divine has turned its ear from its people, right? Turned around. That's the idea here. And so when you see the ladder, it's a reminder again that there's something deeper going on here. God has not forgotten you. God has not forsaken you. God has not turned his back on you. One commentator writes this: in Jacob's dream, Israel is reminded that God will someday escort the nation of Israel back into the promised land. God has not left Israel, but is closer than they realize. And you will catch this in a few verses later. But the idea here is God has been deep at work. You just have not been aware of it. The divine has been coming and going the entire time. You just weren't able to see it, right? You just weren't aware of it. And this next verse kind of rings true. Notice this, verse 13. I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac. The land upon which you are lying I will give you and to your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall gain strength, and westward and eastward and northward and southward, and through it you shall be blessed, all the families of the earth, and through your seed. You know who this is a reference toward, right? We just read about him. Abraham, right? This is a reminder, Abraham, right? You, Israel, you've been blessed with a promise. God will multiply your people, right? You are not a nation that's going to fade away in Babylon. You've been told a promise. You will number the stars, Abraham. And to Isaac, you will be like the sand, the dust on the earth, not just sand, the dust on the earth. You will multiply, right? You will be great. And so there, Abraham shows up, right? Abraham, such a cool moment. But notice who else shows up now. Again, in Hebrew writing, you're constantly referring back and forth, forward and backward to all the different stories. Right? You're constantly doing this, not just to gain credibility, but to remind them that it's all interconnected. So Abraham showed up, but notice who else shows up here. Look at this, verse 15. Behold, I am with you. I'll guard you wherever you go, and I'll restore you to this land. I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken concerning you. And Jacob awakened from his sleep, and he said, Indeed, the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Yeah, Moses shows up next, doesn't he? Remember that moment? Moses, he's been shepherding for years and years and years in this desert place. And then he goes and he finds in this little cave, right? There's a story. He goes to this cave in the Midrash, and there he sees this bush, and it's burning, but it's not burning, right? There's fire, but it's not being consumed. And he says, oh man, surely, God, you have been in this place the entire time. I wasn't even aware of it, right? God has been at work the whole time, and I wasn't even aware of it. What a beautiful message to Israel, right? Even though you've been in the middle of captivity, even though it feels like God has completely forsaken you, the divine has been there the whole time, and you were not even aware of it. Think about that for yourself in your own journey, your own junction on your journey. There are times where it feels like, where is God? Where is God? I'm not even aware of it. And then all of a sudden your eyes are open and you see, whoa, there was a lot more at work than I realized, right? This whole thing was heading in a direction I wasn't even aware of, right? And I'm not saying things are planned for you. That's not the direction I'm going. But when you're able to look back in hindsight, oftentimes you can say, wow, like that really worked out. Right? Wow, those people showed up. Your eyes are opened. And for me, when I thought about this moment, when your eyes are open, when you realize surely God has been there the entire time, I thought about this story. I thought about this story because Jesus, oftentimes, you'll see these stories retold through Jesus, right? You'll see these stories retold in the form of Jesus. And I thought about Luke 24. I thought about this moment after the crucifixion, right? All of a sudden, these two travelers are walking, and Jesus ends up walking between them. Did this literally happen or not? I don't know. I wasn't there. All I know is there's something really deeply symbolic here, and I don't want you to miss it. Jesus, he's walking there with these individuals on this road. And as they're walking, they're telling him about the events of the last couple days. How horrific things were. There was a crucifixion. This Jesus was there. It was just incredible stories. They're telling Jesus about Jesus, right? They're telling him all about these stories, and they're not even aware this is Jesus. And so they're walking with him. What a beautiful picture, telling him about the last couple days that obviously Jesus would have known, right? And then this happens at the very end of this story. In Luke 24, I want to read it to you because I find it so compelling. It says this, verse 30 in chapter 20 of Luke, or 24, I think. It says this, when he was at the table with them, he took bread, again, because they invite him to their home, right? He took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. So he begins doing this ritual with them that would have reminded them of Passover, would have reminded them of him essentially reading Psalm 22, right? The Passover lamb, all of this. Their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And of course, he disappears from their sight, right? Jesus goes ghost, right? He all of a sudden disappears. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" I love this. Were our hearts not burning within us? What a cool idea, right? What a cool phrase. Have you ever had this happen? Your heart is burning. You're in your sanctuary place. And this place where you experience God the most. And again, wherever it is, the mountains, church, a small group, wherever the thing is, your heart is just burning within you. You feel alive. You feel the presence of the divine. This was such a beautiful reminder to Israel at this moment. Such a beautiful reminder. Remember the places that you've experienced with God, Israel. Jewish people during the 70 AD, right? When your temple is again destroyed by the Romans, remember those sanctuaries where you experienced God. Because at some point you will experience them again. And in that moment, your eyes are completely opened. You see hope again. You feel the divine again. You know he's been there the entire time. And surely you weren't even aware of it. What a beautiful idea. Our hearts were burning. Oh, I love it. Let me keep going. Jacob wakes up. He realizes this happened. Surely God has been there the whole time. It says he was frightened. Most translations today use the word frightened. The word is not frightened. That's one of the worst translations. I leave it there so that I can bring it up. The word here, it means to be in awe. And here's the funny thing. If you were to make this into a literal word picture and do an actual like picture now, the Hebrew would be your heart burning inside of you. Like, look at how everything just circles, right? It's so good. Your heart, to be in awe of something, is your heart is literally or symbolically on fire. You're so excited. You're so connected. Your heart is burning. You're in awe. It's not that you're frightened. You are burning. You're so excited. Your heart is on fire. When we experience the divine, his heart is on fire. So good. Verse 18, and Jacob arose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had placed at his head, and he set it on a monument, and he poured oil on top of it. So now watch this. Remembering our interpretation of the rocks, right? The idea that Israel learns to stop quarreling, right? Now he makes this promise, I am going to stop quarreling with my brother. North and south, right? Israel, Judah, we're going to stop quarreling. Finally, right? We were these two different divisions. But once we learn how to be one, we become a place of stability. We become the rock, right? And we become the Peter example. We become the solid place that the world can rest on. So good. Right? And so again, I promise here to stop quarreling with my brother. He makes this really interesting, beautiful promise with the oil and the placement. It becomes a monument there. Beautiful. Sometimes in order to move forward, we have to find ways to end feuds, to leave the bad blood, forgive, move on before we can walk in the new life. Sometimes we need those monuments. Sometimes we need those moments where we just say, enough is enough. I'm done quarreling. We're going to work together. It's beautiful. And then it begins to end this way. And he named the place Bethel, or some of you have said Bethel, right? But Luz was originally the name. He names the place, again, Bethel, sanctuary. So consider this. Sometimes, right, the places we see God are on the mountain biking trails, but sometimes, right, sometimes it's in the middle of pain. Sometimes it's brokenness. Sometimes it's captivity. Our sanctuaries can be very different depending on the time and the place, the space that we occupy, and the time that we're living in, right? In my lifetime, there have been the mountaintop experiences where I've experienced the divine while I'm mountain biking up on the mountain. But then there are the other moments where I am in deep pain, brokenness, in the abyss, and I've also experienced God. We can experience the divine in the highs and the lows. I feel like there have been songs written about that. In the highs and the lows. It's a beautiful concept to consider. The divine is ascending and descending. Yeah, the divine is ascending and descending everywhere we go, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. Verse 20. If God will be with me, and he will guard me on this way upon which I am going, then he will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear. So again, what prophet? We've had Abraham, we've had Moses, now we've got Elijah, right? Elijah shows up, this idea, when I'm in the middle of brokenness, when I'm not sure where God is, God will still sustain me, much like Elijah and these crows, right? These ravens that bring him sustenance. Over and over again, they're going to bring up these different examples that in the past, God has shown up and God will show up again, right? Our deliverance will happen again. Verse 21, and if I return in peace to my father's house, and the Lord will be with me. This idea of my father's house, I need you to know this is a very common Hebrew idea. So when you return to your father's house, when this phrase was used, it meant you're going back to your homeland. That's what it meant. It meant I'm going back to the place where my ancestry was, the place that was promised for me. So you know this, right? You know this verse. In my father's house there are many rooms, and if they were not so, I would have told you so. That I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare, you know this, you know the verse, right? The deeper idea here was not about heaven or life after death. That's like 2,000 years later interpretations from mainly Roman Catholic people, right? The real concept, and I'm not saying those are interesting things to consider, but what we really have to consider is what was this point? What was the reason behind it? Well, the reason was for Jewish people living in captivity, it's telling them someday you're going to go back home. Someday you're going to be back at your father's. Someday you're going to be able to have those meals again with family. Someday there will be peace, shalom again for you. That is so deep, so beautiful. Someday, Jesus says, look, someday you're going to be back in your homeland, right? And when you experience that kingdom come reality, I am there, right? When you experience that meal together where you're breaking bread, you'll think of me. So good, right? So good. And that doesn't mean you can't hold on to other interpretations, but that one is the very Jewish one that would have been understood in that time period, right? It's beautiful, it's rich, it's powerful. And so, verse 22 to finish off, then the stone which I have placed as a monument shall be a house of God, and everything that you give me, I will surely tithe to you. These moments with the divine. They're glorious, right? And when we get them, watch this, we find ways, he says, I will tithe to you. We find ways to give them back, don't we? And this is where a lot of people will say, I've experienced so much blessing, I want to give it back, right? When you've experienced these blessings, when you've experienced these moments with the divine, you want to share it. It fills you, right? That's what the sanctuary does. It fills you. And so for the Jews, when you gain your kingdom back, right? When you get to go home, when you have your temple back, find ways to fill the world. Find ways to give back to the world. And when we do, like Jesus, when he's walking with these two, our hearts burn, right? They're on fire. I love this. Absolutely love this. What a fun chapter this was, right? What a fun section of this chapter. Packed with so much meaning. I hope you enjoyed this. I sure did. So I thought about how can we take it home though? What can we do? For me, I got kind of caught up on this idea of the sanctuary. What is a sanctuary? How do I find my sanctuary, this safe place where I can spend time with the divine, where I can grow, build, prepare for the day? What does that look like? How do I find it? Well, number one, Jesus says this, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so first and foremost, we have to understand from the get-go, peace has to come inside first, right? It means meditating. It For some of us, it's prayer. For others, it's opening the Bible, reading however it is you read, doing inspirational things, whatever it is, but you work on finding that here first. That's why Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within you. And for many people, they don't find it because they don't do the hard work first. So the hard work happens here first, right? If you go to any peaceful sanctuary, any peaceful place, but you are raw inside, there is a chaotic storm inside of you. There's so many things that just need to be dealt with. You will bring that chaos wherever you go. And you've known those people, right? You have this perfect youth group or church or whatever it is, and this person comes there broken. They think this is what they need, and they get there and they only create more chaos, more storm. They needed to work on this first before they were really to fully appreciate the thing that was there. Yeah, so work on this first. Number 2, community. For some people, that's church, that's a friend group, that's a meetup group, a place of safety. But this is where you share your problems, right? You find empathetic friends. You find community. You find people you can walk with in life. Community is so important. And if you're going to have sanctuary, that's got to be a part of it. You have to have community. Whether it's online, whether it's in person, whatever it is, you need community in some way, right? Number 3, nature. I've found for me over and over again, and my wife would scream this to the mountaintops. She needs to be in nature. And there is something really grounding about being in a place where your cell phone doesn't work, right? Being in a place where there's peace, where there's calm, sanctuary, right? This offers up so much beauty. You're just back in touch with the nature all around you. And it's beautiful. Number 4, create a room. I like this idea. For me, I'm still working on this one. Create a room in your home, like whether it's a office or whatever it is, just some space where you can go to on a daily basis. And you can just know this is my safe space, right? It's your den, it's your office room, it's the little chair in the corner where you just pick up a book and you read. Wherever it is, you know that space is there for you to help calm you, relax you, center you, right? Create that safe space. And then lastly, do an activity of calm. I'm learning this one's really important. Again, I wake up in the morning, I lift weights. That's been helpful for me. Others do yoga. Some participate in like a reading, whatever it is, right? Whatever the thing is, if it brings you calm, if it's centering you, if it's bringing you close to the divine so that you can hear that voice again, where your heart's burning again, do it, right? Whatever that thing is. And I think it's different for all of us. And so for me, those are the things I do. But for many others, it's watching this YouTube channel, right? Or it's doing those things that bring a sense of calm. It's an activity. So all of that, I hope you enjoyed this today. That was a lot of fun. That short section, so many beautiful things there. So as the new year begins, I want to remind you, we are a tax-deductible organization. We are a nonprofit. Right. And so we can only function by those donations that continue to come in. We do so much work every week to make this happen. And so please consider going to ethos-church.org/donate. And please give those tax-deductible donations. They really do help keep us moving, filming. They're keeping the lights going. And so we are so thankful for you partnering with us to build this group. Secondly, consider in the new year going to our live discussions, our live chats, our live groups where we want to continue growing, and we're going to try to do this a little more this year. I'm trying to get more and more participation just in live chats throughout the week. And then lastly, hit that subscribe button. 2022 is the year we're growing this thing. Our YouTube channel is going to grow. We're going to find new ways to get more viewership, share more out there. We're also growing in other ways on the internet as well. But YouTube, we'd like to see that grow as well. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We love you. Can't wait to delve into the next chapter of Genesis. So we'll see you next week. Love you. Talk to you then.